But this guy's doing whatever it takes to reach lost people. And when he came to speak to our church, the reality of it was he was late. We'd all got done eating. We had somebody come up and did some music, and we're all just kind of waiting. And, everybody's just kind of wondering, is this guy going to show up? But all of a sudden, man, the doors just came flying open. Whoo, man, I'm up here. Took a drink of water, jumped up on the podium and said, I'm so sorry. I haven't had a time to, even walk through your church or talk to anybody. He said, man, I just can't wait to share with you about how to grow your church. Now, I got to tell you one little side note here. I mean, we had every single staff member and their spouses there. Every deacon and their spouse. Every Sunday school teacher and their spouse. And that place was loaded in there. And all the leaders of our church sat there together to listen to this man. And this man had never been to our church. He had no idea about any kind of program that we ever had. And he was going to come and tell us how to grow our church. Well, let me just tell you something. There were some people that really didn't think too highly of that. I sat back almost on the very back row, leaned back in my chair, and the first thing out of his mouth was, I'm so sorry to tell you that I haven't been here in time to walk through your church and see your sanctuary. I don't know if you have a youth center or a children's center or a preschool department or a singles department. I don't know anything at all about your church. But before we can even get started here, I need to ask you a few questions. And I want to ask you folks here tonight the very same questions that he asked us that night. He said, why is it that you have a singles ministry at your church? Why do you have a children's ministry at your church? Why is it you have a preschool ministry at your church? For that matter, why is it that you have a pastor that stands behind this pulpit and preaches from this Bible every Sunday? Why do you do those things in your church? It's where he answers back. Huh? To reach the lost. Now, I'm going to tell you something. We got a whole lot of answers that night, and I'm sure we can sit here and gather a whole lot more. But for the sake of time, one of the things that he said was when we got that answer right there, he said, let's stop right there. He said, is there anybody here tonight? And I'm asking you the same thing. Is there anybody here tonight that can give me another reason why we do the things that we do in our church that is more important than sharing the love of Jesus Christ with lost people? I am ecstatic to tell you tonight that that's the exact same response that we had. He said, well, I'm going to tell you something, folks. If you so much as got a Sunday school that looks like something like this room right here, and there's nowhere to sit, and those people walk in that back door, and they're looking for somewhere to sit, and there's nowhere there, they're going to turn right back around and go out the back door. And if you don't make room for them, what you've done is they've turned away the opportunity to share Christ with that person. He preached on that for 45 minutes. And he closed with this. He said, I've never been to your church before. I've never been to any one of your Sunday school classes. I don't have any idea if you have a nursery in this church. I don't know if you have a children's ministry in this church. I don't know if you have a youth room in this church. I don't know if you even have a choir in this church. I don't know how many people you can sit in your sanctuary. But I'm going to tell you something. If you so much as have a gym in this church, he was pointing his finger at my nose. If you so much as have a gym in this church, and you're turning kids away from playing basketball, and you might as well get you a yellow flashing sign and stick it right in front of that gym door that says, go to hell, we're full. I didn't hear anything else he said because I got up out of my chair and I ran to my car. And I got in my car and I closed the door, and my wife was right behind me, and she got on the other side and she threw her arms around me. And as I wept over that steering wheel, the only thing that could come out of her mouth was these words. What are you going to do? I said, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And I got up the next morning and I started looking all over this church. Man, I went into Sunday school rooms. I went into fellowship hall. I was looking for somewhere I could put 2 basketball goals. I went into the sanctuary. I thought we could take these first few pews out right here. Put a goal up right there, a goal up right here. Got a little lean in the floor, but that's not a problem. Finally, I went down to the old youth room. It's what was before where you are right now. I walked down there and I realized, you know what? This used to be a gym down here. Then I walked over to the corner and I grabbed some of that old nasty carpet that had Coke and coffee and donuts and Skittles and everything else in there. I pulled it back up, and there was every recreator's dream, boy. It was a maple floor. I got to thinking, man, I tell you what, we could rip up that old carpet. We could put some of that new high rebound carpet down on that stuff. Got the lines in there for basketball. We could put a goal up down here, a goal up down here. We could paint this whole place in here. And, man, I tell you what, we could make this thing work. Man, I went to my youth minister. I said, hey, what do you think, man? Come down here. Let me show you something. We could rip up that carpet, put that new carpet down, put a goal up down here, paint this whole thing. I said, man, if I could just have it Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, you can have it on Wednesday and Sunday. He looked at me and he said, Caz, man, I'm with you, but I don't have any money in my budget. I said, well, I don't either. We'll figure that out later. Man, I started getting all the prices together and all the thoughts together and finding out how much it was going to cost to do this and to do that, and gathered all the information. And I decided at that point that I need to really get busy. And I had 3 men in our church that are mentors of mine, people that mean the world to me, one of which is here tonight. I went to one of those men and I sat down with him and I shared with him the whole Johnny Hunt story. He said, Caz, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm glad you asked. I said, I got this idea. I said, I think we could take that whole gym down there. We could put some new carpet down there and we could paint that whole thing. We could put a goal up down here and a goal up down here. Man, I think we could reach another 200 kids down there. It's a little bitty gym. We could reach another 200 kids. He said, what do you need me to do? I said, well, we got to go through all the committees. I said, you need to help me push this thing through, man. I got to go to the recreation committee, and then I got to go to the staff, and then I got to go to the deacons, and then I got to go to the church. He said, you got any idea what it's going to cost? I said, yes, sir, $11,562. He said, when you need it? I said, 2 weeks. He said, Caz, this is a Baptist church. It ain't going to happen, brother. I looked at him and I said, well, what are we going to do? He thought for a minute. And he pulled out his checkbook. And he wrote me a check for $11,562. He said, let's try it. Do you have any idea how fast you can go through 4 committees with a check in your hand? Right through there. Woo! You need to try it sometime. Well, I'm going to tell you something. In 2 weeks, we had brand new carpet, 2 goals, painted the whole place, reopened our registration, and we signed up 200 more kids. 27 of them played for free. Everybody in our church was pretty excited. I was scared to death because we were full. I started looking all over. What are we going to do? We got to have another gym. I went to our old gym, our new gym that was up there at that time. I thought, you know what? We could knock out that wall right there. We could put a whole other gym right there beside it. We could put one of them gyms right there beside it. We might even put some racquetball courts in between it. We're going to have us a CLC, sure enough. Woo! Thought, man, if we get a whole other gym out there, we'll be able to reach another 520 kids. I called up one of my buddies that's an architect. I said, kid, don't spend any money on this. Just draw it up. Tell me if it's possible. Man, he came back to me. He said, Caz, you're only going to lose 35 parking spaces. This is just going to push out a little bit and get a whole other gym right there. Man, this thing's going to work. And he showed it to me. I said, oh, that's great. Man, I rolled that baby up, tucked it under my arm, decided to go see my friend. Man, I shared with him the whole story. We had another 200 kids. We're full. He said, Caz, what are you going to do? I said, I'm glad you asked. Rolled that baby out. I said, look at there. We're going to be able to add a whole other gym, 520 kids. He said, Caz, you got any idea what that's going to cost? I said, yes, sir, about $2.3 million. Would you like to borrow my pen? You know, he looked across the table at me. And he said, Caz, you don't need another gym. I'm just going to tell you, my heart stopped. Because that man really is the one that helped us get to the point that we were at. And he'd lost his vision. He'd lost it. He looked at me and he said, Caz, what you need is 1,000 gyms. He said, I want you to write that book, and I want you to share it with everybody you know that's got a passion for reaching lost kids and their families for Christ. Man, the moment he said that, that vision that God planned long ago, it went from right here to right here. It is not my vision.